So I'm making 2 loaves, a fruit loaf and a plain loaf. And I'm waiting for them to rise. It's taking a long time because it's pretty cold. I've only just got the heat mat out. I could just leave it. But I want to bake them today. So they've been in the tin since probably about 10 o'clock last night. Something like that. I've usually got the lid on that one, on the right. I've just taken it off for... I can't take the other one off because the dough's inside it and it's stuck to the sides. But that'll come off when it bakes. I'll be able to get it out easily. When I was in France, I took those 2 bread tins with me on the left. And I put my bread to bake like that, and it was so hot in the place I was staying in that I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, oh, I better go check my bread because it's so hot here. It had risen so much, it had pushed this tin upwards and it was all coming out of the side, which was all right for the bread, but it made it quite awkward to slice. Anyway, I had to bake it in the middle of the night then. It had gone wild. So I'm reading from my book. I don't think I'm going to read much today because my cough's really bad. I don't know what to do because I haven't fasted for 2 weeks. Due to travelling. I mean, I was going to fast when I was in France, but I was phenomenally hungry all the time. So I didn't. And then last week I was also phenomenally hungry. And this week I'm not phenomenally hungry. So I could fast, but I'm ill. So I just don't know whether it's wise or not. So I'm going to try and fast for 24 hours. But if I get phenomenally hungry, then I'll just eat some food. I think I'll be alright. It reduces your immunity, you see, fasting. But then it increases it afterwards. I don't really know why I'm coughing though. It's not really producing anything coughing. If I had some cough mixture, I'd take it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to boil some vinegar and inhale the fumes. Because it's like an antiseptic vinegar. If I've got any infection in my lungs, that should get rid of it. I've had my oil burner on all the time with eucalyptus and peppermint in it, which does help a lot. And I've taken like decongestants and paracetamol and stuff. I feel really sick as well. Like I want to fast because my digestion doesn't feel good, and I think that fasting will improve it. But because I'm ill, I just don't feel like I'm making rational decisions either. So anyway, I'm going to boil some vinegar when I finish this. I'm having some shopping delivered later on. So, chapter 9. The second kind of harm, I should have ordered some cough syrup. You know, the stuff that stops you coughing? Since I'm not coughing anything up. And it's just annoying. Right, I'm starting chapter 9 now. The second kind of harm, the danger of falling into self-esteem and vain presumption. 1. These supernatural apprehensions of the memory, if esteemed, are also for spiritual persons a decided occasion for slipping into presumption, into some presumption or vanity. Since those who do not receive these apprehensions are liberated from falling into this vice, because nothing within them warrants this presumption, so, on the other hand, those who receive them will be exposed to the idea that they themselves are now important because of these supernatural communications. Although it is true that one can attribute them to God and be thankful for them, and consider oneself unworthy, yet there usually remains in the spirit a certain hidden satisfaction and an esteem both for the communication and for oneself. Consequently, without one's realising it, an abundant spiritual pride will be bred. 2. This is quite evident from the displeasure and aversion these individuals feel toward anyone who does not laud their spirit or value their communications, and from the affliction they experience on thinking or being told that others receive the same favours or even better ones. All this is born of hidden self-esteem and pride, and these persons are not fully aware that they are steeped in pride. They think that a certain degree of knowledge of one's own misery is sufficient. Yet at the same time, they are full of hidden self-esteem and satisfaction, more pleased with their own spirit and spiritual goods than with those of their neighbour. They resemble the Pharisee, who thanked God that he was not like others, and that he had various virtues, and who derived self-satisfaction and presumption from the thought of these virtues. Luke 18:11-12. Though they may not express this, as the Pharisee did, they habitually feel this way in their spirit. Indeed, some become so proud that they are worse than the devil. Since they observe interiorly some apprehensions and devout and sweet feelings that they think are from God, they become self-satisfied to the extent of thinking that they are very close to God, and others who do not have these experiences are far beneath them, and, like the Pharisee, they look down upon these others. 3. To avoid this pestiferous evil, abhorrent in the eyes of God, they should consider two truths. First, virtue does not consist in apprehensions and feelings of God, however sublime they may be, or in any similar experience. On the contrary, it comprises what they do not experience, that is, deep humility, contempt for themselves and all things, very explicit and conscious to the soul. Delight that others feel contempt for them also, and not wanting to be worth anything in the heart of another. 4. Second, all heavenly visions, revelations and feelings, or whatever else one may desire to think on, are not worth as much as the least act of humility. Humility has the effect of charity. It neither esteems nor seeks its own. It thinks no evil save of self. It thinks no good of self but of others. Consequently, souls should not look for their happiness in these supernatural apprehensions, but should strive to forget them for the sake of being free. Chapter 10. The third kind of harm stemming from the imaginative apprehensions of the memory, that which comes from the devil. 1. It can be deduced and easily understood from all we have said above how much evil can come from the devil by way of these supernatural apprehensions. He can present many false ideas and forms to the memory under the guise of their being true and good. This he does by impressing them on the spirit and the senses through suggestion with much certification and efficacy. They then seem so certain that the soul thinks they cannot be false, but that what it feels is in accord with truth. Since the devil transforms himself into an angel of light, 2 Corinthians 11:14, he seems to be light to the soul, but this is not all. In true visions from God, he can also tempt in many ways, by causing inordinate movements of the spiritual and sensory appetites and affections toward these visions. If the soul is pleased with these apprehensions, it is very easy for the devil to bring about an increase of the appetites and affections and lapse into spiritual gluttony and other harmful things. 2. To better accomplish this, he usually suggests and places pleasure, savour and delight in the senses relevant to these things of God, so that sweetened and dazzled by that delight, the soul may become blind and fix its eyes more. And fix its eyes more on the delightful feeling than on the love, or at least not so intensely on the love, and pay more attention to the apprehension than to the nakedness and emptiness that lie in faith, hope, and love. And in so doing, the devil deceives the soul little by little and readily makes it believe his falsehoods. To a blind soul, falsehood is no longer seems falsehood, and evil no longer evil, and so on. For the darkness appears to be light, and the light darkness. Isaiah 5:20. On this account, the soul will fall into 1,000 blunders in matters natural, moral, and spiritual, and what was wine will have turned into vinegar. All this comes about because of failure from the beginning to deny the pleasure taken in those supernatural apprehensions. Since this satisfaction is slight, or not so evil at first, the soul is not careful, and allows it to remain so that, like the mustard seed, the evil grows into a large tree. Matthew 13:31-32. As the saying goes, small mistake in the beginning, great one in the end. 3. To flee this gross error of the devil, therefore, it greatly behoves individuals not to want to find satisfaction in these apprehensions, for most certainly this satisfaction will gradually blind them and cause them to fall. Pleasure, delight, and savour blind the soul by their very own nature, without the devil's help. David indicated this when he said, "Darkness will perhaps blind me in my delight, and I shall have the night for my light." Psalm 1:39. Oh, sorry, no, that's right. Psalm 1. No, I can't read. Psalm 139:11. That's right. Chapter 11. An impediment to union with God. The fourth kind of harm resulting from the distinct supernatural apprehensions of the memory. 1. Little remains to be said about this fourth kind of harm, since we are explaining it all along in this third book. We have given proof that a soul must renounce all possession of the memory in order to reach union with God in hope. For if hope is to be centered entirely on God, nothing that is not God should reside in the memory. And we have also given proof that no form, figure, image, or idea, whether heavenly or earthly, natural or supernatural, that can be grasped by the memory is God or like to him. Accordingly, David teaches, "Lord, among the gods no one is like you." Psalm 86:8. Consequently, if the memory desires to pay attention to this knowledge, it is hindered from union with God first, because of the circumstance. Second, because the more possessions it has, the less hope it has. 2. The soul, therefore, must live in nakedness and forgetfulness of distinct forms and knowledge about supernatural apprehensions, so as not to impede union of the memory with God through perfect hope. Chapter 12. Base and improper judgments about God, the fifth kind of harm arising from supernatural imaginative forms and apprehensions. 1. The fifth kind of harm derived from the desire of preserving in the memory and imagination these forms and images of supernatural communications is no less evil than the others, especially if the soul desires to use these images as means toward divine union. It is extremely easy to judge the being and height of God less worthily and sublimely than befits his incomprehensibility. Though one may not form an explicit idea that God is similar to these apprehensions, nevertheless the very esteem for them, if in fact one esteems them, produces in the soul an estimation and opinion of God less elevated than is given in the teaching of faith, that he is incomparable, incomprehensible, and so on. In addition to taking all this attention given to creatures away from God, the soul will naturally form in its interior, through esteem for these apprehensions, a certain comparison between them and God. This comparison prevents it from having as lofty a judgment and esteem of God as it ought. Creatures, earthly or heavenly, and all distinct ideas and images, natural and supernatural, that can be the objects of a person's faculties, are incomparable and unproportioned to God's being. God does not fall under the classification of genus and species, whereas according to theologians, creatures do. There's a footnote here. Compare Aquinas, Summa Theologia 135, Contra Gentes 125. And the soul is not capable of receiving clearly and distinctly in this life what does not fall under the classifications of genus and species. Thus St. John affirms that no one has ever seen God. John 1:18. Isaiah declares that it has not entered the human heart what God is like. Isaiah 64:4. And God told Moses, "You cannot see me in this life." Exodus 33:20. Therefore anyone encumbering the memory and the other faculties of the soul with what is comprehensible cannot have a proper esteem or opinion of God. 2. Here is a poor example. The more people set their eyes on the king's servants, and the more attention they pay to them, the less heed they pay to the king, and the less they esteem him. Though this estimation is not in the intellect formally and explicitly, it is there practically, because the more attention they give to the servants, the more they take away from their Lord. And then their judgment of the king is not very high, since the servants seem to them somewhat important in comparison with the king, their Lord. This is what happens in relation to God when a person pays attention to these creatures, although the comparison is very inadequate. Because as we have mentioned, the being of God is different from the being of his creatures. God, by his being, is infinitely distant from all of these creatures. The soul should consequently turn its eyes from these creatures so as to focus them on God in faith and hope. 3. Those who not only pay heed to these imaginative apprehensions, but think God resembles some of them, and that one can journey to union with God through them, are already in great error, and will gradually lose the light of faith in their intellect. And it is by means of faith that the intellect is united with God. Furthermore, they will not increase in the loftiness of hope. The means for union with God in the memory. The union is effected by disuniting oneself from everything imaginative. The next chapter is very long, so I'm going to leave it there, because it's making me throat itch talking. I'm really tired, and I've definitely slept for long enough. I think it's not being able to breathe properly that's making me tired. It's the stress, you see. Like, it's a big physical toll on me. Travelling long days, carrying heavy things, and getting cold. And but it's not that I could manage that, it's the stress of the constant harassment and head messing crap. It really wears me down. And then when I can get home and relax, I've become ill. So I felt better actually when I got back this time. I felt better than I usually do. Maybe I overdid it. I'm not sure. It wasn't that cold. This time when I came back, it wasn't that cold as it has been on previous occasions. And I've absolutely got chilled to my bones sometimes before. But the weather was quite pleasant and warmish. I still put the heating on though because I didn't want to be cold. And obviously there hadn't been any heating on when I wasn't here, so the whole place had cooled down. And I think maybe I overdid it with the heating because I was determined not to get cold. But it's relaxing from the stress that's caused this, I think. It's terribly stressful, just constant bloody harassment. It never stops, like it's all the way there and all the way back, and I never know what spiteful thing the psychopaths are going to do to sabotage my journey like they have done before. And so it's an enormous amount of stress. Anyway, I'm sure I'll recover. I thought I'd be recovered by now, but the cough's getting worse. Hopefully my vinegar will help. I'm going to look on YouTube to see if there's any exercises I can do to clear my chest. I don't feel as bad as I did because my whole body was aching. And like to the extent it was hard to move around. But now I feel a lot better. I actually feel better even though I sound worse. But the cough's getting worse. So... Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.